Well, hello there. I'm Sin. We are in the Book Nook, and today we are going to do my cryptid readathon wrap up and also my November wrap up. So we'll do the cryptid books first, and then we'll get into the other books that I read. The first one I read was The Legend of Ogopogo by Jason Hewlett, which is about the lake monster called Ogopogo that lives in Lake Okanagan, which is in Canada. It's a nonfiction book. It gets into the history and the lore behind the sightings, and it follows the author, Jason Hewlett, and also filmmaker Eli Watson as they go and do all this research and talk to different people, interviewing different experts on the subject, as well as some of the native people that live there that have Ogopogo tied into their culture and lore and what they consider that creature to be and as more of like a spiritual being and whatnot. And it's just a fascinating read. There's also a film that's tied to the book that you can purchase it currently on DVD. I think eventually it'll come to their YouTube channel. It's put out through Small Town Monsters. It's called Cursed Waters. So that one was a lot of fun. I flew through it. It's a shorter book, easy read, and it was quite fascinating. I love reading books about lake monsters, so right up my alley. So after that one, keeping it with like weird creatures of the deep, I read the fiction book called Meg by Steve Alton, and that is about the megalodon shark, which is kind of had like a Jaws type vibe to it, but it's a lot bigger than Jaws. It was like a 60-foot shark that's like, oh, I forget. I want to say it's like 60,000 tons, but that can't be right, right? It weighs a lot. It's very heavy and it's very hungry. And for a long time, it was believed to not exist anymore. But they still exist down really deep in the Mariana Trench. And the reason they hadn't come up above the surface is because there's like this like polar area down there. Like down deep below, it's by the volcanic vents, so it's warmer and whatnot. But as you swim up, it gets really arctically cold, and the sharks usually would not cross that barrier. But of course, mankind has to go down there and start farting around, and yep, one of them follows them up to the surface, and the Meg is hungry. It's a fun horror story. This is the second book I've read by Steve Alton. The prior one I read was The Loch, which was a Loch Ness Monster horror story. A lot of fun. I think this was his first book. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it was a fun read, and if you like underwater horror, Meg is a ton of fun. So after that, I read a Bigfoot horror, and that's called Rogue by Luke Phillips. This one, it has like the storyline is on a realistic basis, like what would actually happen if there were Sasquatch type creatures and one of them went rogue and started killing humans, like how would that be handled? Who would come in to handle that and all that stuff. So it follows the story of this forest ranger, Nina, and she doesn't quite believe in Sasquatch, doesn't think there's much to it. But then all these incidents start happening that are quite strange, that don't seem like it could possibly be a bear or a mountain lion. So you have like the forest rangers aspect. You have all these other little stories about stuff happening, people being found dead, some people actually escaping and seeing the creatures and then going and telling people. And so some of the forest rangers, they have a phone number and a code that they say when they think it's not a bear. And so you have like some of the special forces, like Black Ops people come in that are gonna take care of the situation. It's a crazy story. It's a lot of fun. I have a standalone review for that. If you have any interest in hearing a little bit more about that, I'll have a link to that down below. And if you ever read the book Devolution by Max Brooks, like I thought it was on par with that for a Bigfoot horror. Like it's awesome. I would highly recommend. And there's going to be a sequel to it as well. I forget. I want to say it's called Southern Rogue, but don't quote me on that because I might be wrong. But I'm super excited to get to the next one when it comes out because it was so much fun. All right, so after that one, we read another Sasquatch horror, and that was The Attack on Sasquatch Valley by Jason White. Jason White is booktuber. If you've ever watched Jason's Weird Reads, that's Jason, and I'll put a link to his channel down below if you want to check him out if you haven't had the chance. But yeah, he wrote a book called Attack on Sasquatch Valley. It is 4 stories that are all Bigfoot horror, and it's great. I absolutely loved it. The writing's fantastic. It pulls you in. There's like some emotional elements to it. It's a fast-paced read. I flew through it in a couple days, and I super highly enjoyed it. If it's not out by the time this video comes out, I do have a standalone review that is coming for that. So I will either, if it's out, I will link it down below. If it's not, it'll be coming. So keep an eye out for that. After that, I read the book A Misfortune of Lake Monsters by Nicole Wolverton. So back to some more underwater horror. And it follows the story of this girl, Lemon Ziegler, and her family has been perpetuating a hoax for like years for this lake monster, Old Lucy. They do this for the good of the town because everything in town is like lake monster themed. And if they didn't have that there, the town would just sink into poverty and there would be nothing there and businesses would dry up and it would be kind of horrible. So they've been, keeping the hoax alive to bring in tourists. So they have the tourist business and all that. It falls on Lemon that she's now going to be the lake monster. They have a whole like suit that she gets in and just needs like people to see her so that they can start talking and drumming up the gossip about seeing the lake monster. And so, she goes out for her first excursion, goes to school the next day. People are talking about they saw old Lucy, and she's like, okay, cool. So that means she's gonna have to go back in the water for 3 weeks, maybe a month, who knows. Then one day she's at school and there's an earthquake. And then all of a sudden, there seems there's an actual lake monster in the lake and it's really hungry. This book's great. I freaking loved it. If you like underwater creatures and cryptids, it's a fun horror. And it is also like there's a sweet little romance that's kind of wrapped up in it. So it's like a horror romance and it's super cute and I loved it. There's going to be a standalone review for that one too. Most of the cryptid books I read this month should have standalone reviews and I will have those all linked down below. So those were all the cryptid books that I read. So we're going to get into some of the other ones now. I read the book We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kluwer or Klauer. I'm not sure how to say their last name. It's so freaking weird. It's a liminal, out of time and space kind of book where it has the vibe of like a little bit of House of Leaves, but not as crazy. Like House of Leaves, you're reading stuff upside down and it's hard to follow. So it's not like that, but it has like that weird liminal, like going through different times and space and ending up in weird, strange spaces. Okay, so follows this couple and they flip houses. Usually they move into a house, they flip it, they sell it. They're there from anywhere from like 6 months to a year. So they move into this house. It's Charlie and I want to say Eve or Evie. Eva? Dang it, I don't remember the name. Well, anyways, one of them's home alone and this family shows up and the guy is like, hey, we used to live here, was wondering if I could show my family around the house and, just kind of show them the house that I grew up in. And she's like, I don't know. And then despite her misgivings, because the guy's like 15 minutes tops, she's like, okay, fine. So they come in and he starts showing them around. And then the family just so way overstays their welcome and weird stuff starts happening and it's pretty effed up and I loved it. It was so good. Also have a standalone review for that. I think I have a standalone reviews for most of the books that I'm going to talk about, and they'll be down in the darkness. All right, so after that, we read the second book in the Talents trilogy, and that is Bringer of Dust by J.M. Miro. So the first book in the series was called Ordinary Monsters. The first book I thought was all right. I thought it was decent. The second book is like leaps and bounds better. Because the first one, it felt slow because you're setting up a story. There's a lot of character detail you get into and all that, and explaining how the talents work and all of that stuff. So this one, you jump right into the story. It is a crazy dark fantasy. It's gruesome, it's gory, and I don't even know what to compare it to be honest. I mean, it's got that like X-Men vibe for sure, but maybe even a little darker than that. And it was a lot of fun, and I really like that one a lot. Yep, got a standalone review for that one too, baby. After that, we read This Cursed House by Del Sandine. This book follows the main character, and she's had like a lot of trauma in her life. She loses her job. Her boyfriend, who she lived with, had knocked up some other woman, and then she tried to kill herself, so she lost her job due to that. And then so she moves out of his place and gets away from him and is living with her friend Betty. She gets this letter one day. This family wants her to come down to New Orleans. She thinks to be a tutor, and it's like 3 times the salary that she was making before. So she's like, yes, I will do this. And it's like escaping the situation from where she was dealing with all this other horrible crap. So it's like kind of a new start. Let's go. It pays well. So she goes down there. when she gets there, goes to work for the Duchan family, and it's like this old house, like an old plantation house, and it weirdly smells really smoky all the time. No one seems to notice the smell. And she gets there and like talks to the family, and the family seems nice, whatever. There doesn't seem to be any kids around, and she's trying to figure out like who is she going to tutor. And she even asked this, and the matriarch of the family, or Grandmere, she's like, oh, well, we'll talk about that later. And she's like, okay. And it seems this house has a really weird history, and there may be a curse on the family, and this family may want her to break the curse. How's she going to do it? I don't know. You'll have to read it to find out. And it's a fantastic book. It's emotional and it is atmospheric, and it's like this just great gothic fiction. After that, I read Don't Eat the Pie by Monique Asher. And this is a story, it's like a mother-daughter story, and the mother gets remarried, and the daughter, she never really knew her father. Her mom just doesn't really tell her anything about her dad. Her dad was a POS and used to beat the crap out of her mother, but her mother never tells her this. And then so the daughter has kind of been in contact with the dad and wants to meet the dad. And it's like, why wouldn't you tell your daughter that he used to beat you? This could be important. Don't you think like kids want to meet their birth parents? That's the thing. They're curious. They want to know. You should tell your daughter this. So she doesn't tell her that. So that's part of the story, right? Anyways, mom gets remarried. They go to stay on this island with the new husband's mother because the mother falls and has an accident, so they have to take care of her for a while. The plan is, though, that they're going to leave, get off the island, and not live there. But it doesn't seem that that's going to happen. And they are a very close-knit society, and they're very weird, and there's some strange crap going on that seems kind of like occultish and whatnot. And every year they have this weird pie festival where, don't eat the pie. So the daughter and like some friends she makes, they go and they take a Ouija board into this house that seems to be haunted, this next door. And next door is the house where her mom's new husband used to live with his wife, whose wife died in that house. So that's another weird thing going on. So they do a Ouija board thing, and it's like, don't eat the pie, die, die, die. So don't go to the pie festival, don't eat the pie. Her mom's gonna eat the freaking pie, and bad stuff's gonna happen. It's a crazy book. It is a wild story, and I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I thought the name of it was kind of dumb. I'm gonna be honest. I thought Don't Eat the Pie was a dumb name for a book, but the book's great. So if for some reason you have my brain problems thinking that sounds like a dumb title, I don't normally think that about books. I can't think of a title that I was like, what? Anyways, welcome to my rambly ramblings about nonsense. That's how my brain works. I don't know. I didn't like the title, but I love the book. So why did I read it if I didn't like the title? Because it's a Michigan author and the premise sounded good. After that, I read Coup de Grace by Sophia Ajram, and that is a very intense little novella. It's quietly and sadly beautiful, and it is an accurate portrayal of hopelessness and despair, and it's in this small little book, and it's a powerful read. I really liked it quite a bit. After that one, I read The Cottage Around the Corner by D.L. Soria. And this is a cozy, fantasy little witchy romance book. Sometimes after reading all of the horror and weird stuff that I read, I need something that's a little more cheery. So I picked up that book. I had heard someone talking about it over on Blue Sky, and it sounded super cute, and it was totally super cute. So it follows this family of witches, and they have this cottage called the Chanterelle Cottage, and they have had a little witchy business there where they sell like spell jars, and they do tarot readings, and they sell different sorts of bits and bobs there. And also, their business isn't doing so great, so they're a little worried about it. One day, another business comes to town that is these mages, and so magecraft and witchcraft, they all, kind of butt heads against each other. And so with these mages coming to town, this is going to threaten the Chanterelle Cottage witches business. So this is not so great. And then add that to the fact that the main character, ends up meeting the brother-sister team that are going to run the mage business. And, well, the brother is quite handsome, and therefore there may be a romance that happens, and it's super cute, and I loved it. After that, I read The Threshing Floor by Steph Nelson. Oh my goodness. I read a lot of good books this month. The Threshing Floor is awesome. Steph Nelson is awesome. So I had read one other book by her called The Vein, and her writing style is fantastic. It's an addictive read, just great characters. So the Threshing Floor, it follows the story of this mother named Dallas and her son Cash. And Cash has a heart defect that he was born with. And I'm not quite sure. It seems like he wasn't born with a fully formed heart. And so at some point he's going to need a heart transplant or he will die. And so Dallas at some point ends up meeting these people, these church people who are actually like occults. And it seems their leader has the ability to heal people. But the leader seems a bit deranged and keeps getting more deranged. And the price one may have to pay to get that healing is very high. And then she only doles it out to people she thinks deserve it. I don't know. It's creepy as crap. And it was such an addictive read. Like you start out to you get like you see a little bit of the end of the story, but you're like, what in the F is actually going on? So you come into the book and you have Dallas and she's like running through somewhere down this hallway down in the darkness and there's like red flashing lights and someone's coming after her or something or people, I don't know. And then she finds this door and she goes in this room and then she starts stepping around and it's like squish, 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 crunch, crunch. And I'm like, oh, dead things. What is it? I don't know. It doesn't say. And there's wet things that she touched. And then all of a sudden she hears a voice that's like, hello? Is someone there? Can you help me? And I'm like, what the F? So you jump into the book. That's like the first thing you read. And you're like, okay, what's happening? And then it's like, oh, we're going to back up and then you get the story coming forward. And then it also bounces too with like the cult leader. Her name's Riva. Riva and her brother Shane. It gives the backstory of how Riva came into her healing powers, how her mother treated her, and how her people treated her, and all that stuff, and how she became kind of how she was. And it was a really fantastic, addictive read. I absolutely loved it. Would highly recommend. So, out of all these books, what is my favorite out of all of these? That is an excellent question. Let me stare at this list really quick to see. Hmm. Oh, I would say it was either Bringer of Dust by J.M. Miro, the second in the Talents trilogy. It was just was really freaking good. Or Rogue by Luke Phillips, the Bigfoot horror. I thought that one was awesome. It's super good. And if you're interested in any of these books, I'll have links down below if you want to check them out. Those are affiliate links. Also, if you are a fan of videos where I talk about multiple things that I'm reading or have read, next video coming up will be about that. So stick around, check it out. And if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.